I would say that Thursday was a really bad day for the MAGA movement. And they've been having a nice run of good days recently, but Thursday was not one of them. And what happened exposed, I think, the first signs of what could be a rift between the administration and really its most loyal followers. And it involves Jeffrey Epstein. And by now we all know the story of Jeffrey Epstein, right? He was this wealthy guy who was a sex trafficker, but he had a bunch of underage girls, and he would take celebrities and other wealthy people to an island that he owned, Epstein Island, so they could have sex with these underage women. And they got him. He was busted. He went to jail. And shortly after that, they found him hanged in his cell. They said it was suicide. Some people to this day still question that. They don't think it was suicide. They think it was murder. They think it was foul play involved. But for the most part, everyone is pretty glad Jeffrey Epstein is gone. Bad guy. He didn't see justice, but, bad guy. But Epstein had ties to a lot of famous people. Movie stars, rock stars, tech guys, politicians, including former presidents, and there have current presidents. And there have long been questions over what celebrities and rich and famous people went to Epstein Island and committed crimes. One that we know of is Britain's Prince Andrew, but other than that, we really have no idea who these offenders are or were. There's speculation, but there's no hard evidence that proves that any other person of note was there. Bill Clinton is a name we hear. Bill Gates are names that frequently come up in conversations, but there's no evidence of either of them doing anything. But supposedly, there's a list. There's a flight log of people who went to the island. Familiar names. And when we see it, it will expose the elite for the pedophiles that they are. And many people have grabbed onto this theory. Even though there's no hard evidence of such list, MAGA in particular has been very excited about seeing this list. And during the campaign, Trump and others in his orbit, his surrogates, promised that we were all going to get to see it when he was elected. Day one, Epstein files were going to come out. We were going to know all the names, and then we were going to start arresting them. When she took office, Attorney General Pam Bondi, current Attorney General, started promising that she was going to put it out. And yesterday was supposed to be the day that it was released. So, the people on X, on Twitter, got really excited. Today's the day. The elites are going to be exposed. Bill Clinton will be arrested and will have to pay for his crimes. And I will tell you, it was not just conservatives. Many people of no party affiliation or who were on the left wanted to see this supposed list as well. It would have been a big deal. So on Wednesday, Pam Bondi came out. She said she had the list in her possession. She said there were lots of names and other information. This could be a really big deal, right? Everybody was saying that. So the administration decides to bring a bunch of conservative Twitter influencers to the White House and decided that they were going to be the first ones to see these sensitive documents and push them out to their millions of followers. People you probably never heard of unless you're on Twitter. And they all got binders. They all got white binders that said Phase 1 on the front. And after examining them, everybody realized that they contained no new information. Nothing. No new names than the ones we already knew were in Epstein's phone book. And the phone book, of course, is evidence of nothing. A lot of celebrities knew Epstein personally. That doesn't make them pedophiles. A lot of elites rented out Epstein's plane for personal trip. But the binders contained absolutely no information after Bondi promised that it did. But here were these influencers, people who run the X accounts. You may have heard some of them if you're on the network. DC Drano, Libs of TikTok, that woman, Scott Pressler, Liz Wheeler, Cernovich, and they made a big show of them out front of the White House where they're with their binders, waving them around, and they did this weird little dance with them. It was goofy, right? But they were celebrating. Hey, we got him. We got Jeffrey Epstein's, and we got all these pedophiles. So after all this excitement and all this buildup, the people on X/Twitter got the word that there was nothing of importance, no revelations in the binders, and they got really upset. I'm talking about the MAGA faithful now, right? The die diehards, the people who follow these influencers religiously. And they were furious. They were mad at Bondi. They thought rightly that the big scene with the influencers at the White House was unserious. They had been waiting for years for this list to finally be exposed. They posted about it all the time. Trump was the most transparent president ever, and he was going to finally put out the list, whereas Biden and the Democrats and the other elites had been doing everything they could to keep it under wraps because they were actually on the list. That was the thought process. And it was a nothing burger. And they were pissed. And they had every right to be, right? And yesterday, if you visited Twitter, you could sense this change. Because the network is mostly dominated by the right now, X is. Specifically MAGA, specifically the very pro-Trump people. And while they're all usually very loyal to Trump and the administration, to a fault, they really went after Bondi and these influencers. The criticism of the way this was done was nearly unanimous. They didn't really go after Trump, even though he was probably the architect of this whole thing. But I've never seen MAGA in all these 10 years so upset at Trump and Trump world because they thought they had been gaslit, and they had. The whole thing had been a big scam because there is no list that we know of. If there was a list, it would have been released by now or would have leaked or something. But the list itself was a conspiracy theory that millions of people bought into. Trump and his people used the idea that this list existed and was being withheld to get everyone excited and everyone riled up. And they promised over and over again, it's coming, it's coming. Then, of course, when it was time to release the list, they had to put something out. So they got the binders that looked official and stuffed some paper in them that was related to the case in some way. And we were to think that they gave this sensitive legal information to a bunch of MAGA influencers? No. The whole thing was absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I feel kind of bad for Pam Bondi. I don't think she had a choice here. This stunt has Trump written all over it. He makes a promise that he can't keep, and then he finds a way to convince people he kept it. But this time, like Mexico paying for the wall, right? But this time it backfired, and Attorney General Bondi took the hit. Now, in order to cover up the embarrassment, this is where it gets even worse. Bondi said that the reason the list wasn't there was that the FBI, also part of the administration, had withheld the list. Then she changed her story again. She blamed the Southern District of New York's office and said they were obstructing the release of the list. And then they made a connection to the withholding of the list to James Comey's daughter. That's what's going on Twitter right now. James Comey's daughter apparently works at the Southern District of New York's offices. That's the prosecutor's office that initially charged Epstein. So Bondi came up with a lot of scapegoats to pin the blame on. But the bottom line is Trump promised something that he couldn't deliver on. But he kept saying it. He kept saying it, and Bondi kept saying it for political gain. And the whole thing blew up in the administration's face. Not just because there was nothing there, but also because of the dopey way they presented the whole thing. It was a mess. And it made them look really bad, and even the ex-diehards couldn't defend it. Some of them bought into the SDNY, Southern District of New York line, and the thing about the Comey's daughter. I think that's to save face because they're embarrassed right now. Overall, however, this shows us the power of social media to build a conspiracy up to a point where almost everyone believes it. I bought into it. Unthinkingly. I heard it so much, I just thought it was a fact. Yeah, I guess there's some list out there that shows all these pedophiles' names that went to Epstein Island and who, for some reason, haven't been arrested for sleeping with teenage girls. When we hear something enough, even the smartest and most perceptive of us can start to believe it. I wasn't yelling and screaming for the list to be released like some people, but it was a scandalous concept. And we are addicted to that. We're addicted to that kind of sensationalism. We want to believe it's true, that answers are right around the corner, especially when horrible things are done. Secrets are about to be revealed. And look, the Trump administration did the same thing with the JFK assassination stuff. There wasn't as much fervor for it, but Trump was like, we're going to release the information and we'll know once and for all who shot JFK. He's gaslighting. This is all gaslighting of his own supporters. And he does this kind of thing all the time. And most of the time his supporters don't care and they echo his talking points. But this time they aren't doing that. So, you have to ask yourself, is this a tipping point? Is this where MAGA finally sees that they have been duped about a lot of things for years? Probably not. There's too much loyalty to Trump. It's so strong. If he comes out today and says something explaining this, the whole thing would probably disappear regardless of how unconvincing the explanation is. But this shows you that MAGA is capable of recognizing a scam. Not all scams, but some scams when they see it. Because that's what this was. It was a huge scam. There is no secret list. Bill Clinton is not going to get perp walked out of his house and get sent to jail. But people wanted to believe that that's what was going to happen. They wanted justice. And Trump promised them they would have it. And he was going to give it to them. And then he pulls the rug out from under them. And hides in the background, kind of. He wasn't even out there with the influencers. It was just Bondi. He let his attorney general take the fall. So we need to get better at recognizing conspiracy theories. Media literacy, right? We as Americans need to get better at differentiating things that we want to be true from the things that are actually true. And the fictional Epstein list is a great example of this. Same thing with the upcoming expedition that Trump and Musk are taking to Fort Knox, right? Totally performative. Oh, we got to find out if the gold is there. The gold is there. It's meant to stoke the fires of conspiracy and sensationalism. And hopefully at some point, the people will get sick of this and we'll go back to normal. I'm Dan Joseph. This is Bite Size Politics. Please subscribe to the podcast here or on YouTube if you're crumbing across the video for the first time. Have a great weekend.